Welcome to Academy of Tone 263. Today we are all about guitar recording. Hey, stop. Yeah, I was at a great seminar, the first ever Metal Con in Frankfurt Studio 301 last Saturday. This event was taking place on 3 days, which was Friday, Saturday and Sunday. I was only there on Saturday together with Valeska. She's a metalhead. And I was curious about Christian Kohle's guitar workshop or guitar recording workshop. And that kind of triggered the whole idea for this episode today. Guitar recording is something that most of us are doing eventually, maybe not. And if so, you might have noticed that it's not always that easy. It's a lot of disappointments when you think, where is my wall of sound? Where's the best tone that I know from all the great records of Metallica or even blues records? I choose the Iridium and the Les Paul today just because I'm still in the metal zone a little bit for a change. But yeah, I wanted to make this episode about recording and to give you a few ideas what is possible, where it all started, what are easy solutions, and what you can do if you want to go all the way and where to spend more time. In general, I think it's you have to find a method that suits the situation. For instance, I recorded my Rock Anarchy live, DVD and CD live, which means no overdubs, no extra processing, but I had my amp 1 and I had my BluBOX signal and I had an unprocessed signal. So when I was doing the mixing, I could still have another BluBOX and mix it with this one. Just because I had the option with this kind of setup, and I was actually using that. I will demonstrate this in a minute. Yeah, but there is no way for a live recording to make, overdubs and replacing tracks because it's bleeding through the drum mics and all that stuff. So that's a different situation from going into a studio or being at home at your home recording studio and laying down tracks, and you have all the time in the world and you have all the options in the world because nobody is there that asks for whatever time or anything like that. And therefore, I want to show you a few different options so you can find out what makes most sense for you depending on first what you like and second what actually works in this kind of situation. So the whole thing started, of course, with a microphone. I have this, for instance, here. And, some of those SM57s, which is a classic one, which is here, or the Sennheiser. There are several different classic microphones that have been used in the past, and there are new ones. And I would suggest to use a Shure SM57. Why? Because they are cheap. They are used by all kinds of genres, from country to western and metal, rock, blues and whatnot. And it's a generic microphone that simply features guitar frequencies. It has the tendency to be a little bit on the bright side, but it's a classic. And if you only can afford one mic, the SM57, which I have here on my Marshall cabinet, maybe you can see this one here. That's a classic. That's the one you should get. because cheap guitar works. So I'm a little bit posh because I use the big brother of the SM57 a lot, which is the SM7B. And this is also here in my ISO cab, which is in the next room. That's the big boy. And next to it, you see the capsule of the 57. I took away the grip for it and put it somewhere else. But yeah, that's actually a 57 just in two parts, but it works. So what can we do? I switch off what I have been using at the intro, which was the Iridium edition, and two BluBoxes with two different speakers. But about this later. Let me show you the SM7. No, the 57. This should be it. So. So you have seen the picture of that microphone close miking very close to the cabinet, and maybe you can hear it is kind of aggressive. Maybe you find it over aggressive, but it always works in a way. I didn't EQ anything, so the mics are just as they are, placed in front of the ISO cab, and so this is the SM57. So next one here is the big brother, the SM7B. Where is it? Here. Yeah, I prefer this because it kind of has the SM57 sound, but bigger, ballsier, warmer, and that's my favorite microphone for almost ever. It's more expensive though, but yeah, let's compare it. '57, 7B. Okay, so these mics are pretty close to each other, but what you have to know is every inch, every centimeter of the mic position changes so much. And I can show you this with this 57. Wait a minute, I switch to the other amp and okay, then we switch that off and switch that on. Okay, so what we're hearing now is this boy, and well, different amp, different settings, but I wanted to show you the difference in the mic placement. So this is this position here. Yeah, so maybe you can see there are different marks here, which I put on the grill glove to, well, have an idea where I used my mic the last time when I tried to get a similar sound. So that's the way, yeah, how to use such a mic. The point is, you should find the spot that you like the best. General rule is easy in the middle, it's the brightest, and the more you go outwards from the center of the cone of the speaker, the darker it sounds. And you can also angle the microphone. Maybe show you what happens when I do that. Yeah, so with you know, as the steeper the angle, the less in your face and the less aggressive the sound is. So it all depends on what you want, what you need. If you want it fully into your face, straight on, some people prefer that. I personally like it when it's not 100% bright. So I tend to use the place where the dust cap of the speaker, which is that little nose in the middle of the speaker, meets the paper cone, and then I move it towards the paper. So I have a slight angle. I can try to find the spot here. It could be like that, something like that. It's not a right angle, it's kind of at the edge and maybe a little bit more parallel to the paper cone, which is of course not flat. It's a little bit inwards. So maybe you can see, so if this is the cone moving up and down, and the cone goes kind of inwards, so the mic would go, you know, on this point where there's the dust cap here, and being a little bit more towards the paper. That's my personal preference, okay? So, of course, every microphone has a different character or EQ curve or whatever you name it. And the idea of, well, different mics, different mic placements, is just that you experiment with it and that you find what you like the best. I mean, it's just like picking a guitar, you have to pick a mic, and of course, what's even more important, the right speaker. But, you know, I'm assuming that you already have your amp, including the speaker, and it's just about how to record it now, which starts with the mic, and of what we just heard with the mic placement. Yeah, so if you have the chance for checking out different mics, simply go for it, because you only learn, and you will experience so many different sounds just from one mic on different speakers, on different places. Each speaker actually sounds different. They have so big tolerances. So if I use the other speaker of my 4x12, sorry, it sounds different. And this is the same model, Celestian Greenback in that cabinet, blah, blah, blah. So, and yeah, it's about experimenting and taking decisions. I think that's the biggest point, because having all the options, you have to make a decision based on your taste, what you want. Okay, the problem is maybe you know what you want, but you don't know if it works in the mix, which means if you have a great sound through the monitor speakers or in the room, that's all good. But maybe it's a sound that does not work with the rest of the band. And that is, of course, knowledge. The basic thing I can tell you is you will be astonished that you usually need less bass and more bite and more more presence than you think. Then you think sounds good, but when you listen in the mix, that kind of presence is what cuts through and what brings the guitar in your face, in the sound, in the mix. And to find the right sound, of course, you should play it against the backing track or against the other instruments. Of course, the more you do that, the more you learn what works and what doesn't, because learning by doing, that's the way it's always been. And if you have some experienced people around you in a studio, listen to their advice, because they have been there, they have done that before, and that's, they can probably help you in a way that you don't waste time or do something that you would regret. Yeah, and this is maybe now the time to talk about studios. Back in the days when I recorded, in my very early days, I had a little cassette machine at home, a 2-track cassette machine, and then I bought a Porta Studio with 4 tracks. So this was my playground, this was my experimenting playground. And we recorded my school band, and we had several tracks, and I did an overdub with solos, and I placed the mic somewhere else, and I learned that very different sounds from the mic placement. That was level 1. But soon after, I was getting hired to play in the studio for some reason, because I became a session guitar player at age 17, which was quite unusual. Lucky coincidence, and I knew what sounded good. But at that moment, I had professional guys in the studio that were telling me, hey, you should try out that microphone. Last week we had this guy in and he was doing that. Or let's try this kind of miking up the cabinet. And, there were people that were sharing knowledge, which you can find now on the internet. But this was my source of inspiration. And back in the days, there were proper studio engineers. And now back to the event, the MetalCon, which was taking place at the Studio 301 in Frankfurt. There was Uli Schiller, who runs those studios. And I actually have recorded at Studio 301, but the one in Cologne. I recorded my Soul and Papa album. So this one was recorded at the Studio 301. So when I was there at the metal convention, we had, of course, a lot of stories to share and things we could talk about, which was nice. And of course, we talked about the good old days in the studio and how exciting it was. And of course, what's also happening today, and what's the new reality and the new options. At this event, I also met Jürgen Kirschner, who is kind of a distributor guy who has many pedals that he sells into the German or European market. He also is distributing Fryette amps, and this is a little thing that I've done on Sunday night. I was at Stephen Fryette's live stream that he has on his YouTube channel called the Malcontents. I think it was S5 episode 6. I don't get that kind of naming. It might mean something, but it was very nice because I know Stephen for many years, and he actually came up with our first meeting, which I kind of forgot about. There was a very dark memory, and he said, "I saw you in 1989." I mean, I think this was one of my first trips to the United States ever, at the LA Amp Show. And then we actually met, and then, yeah, we always have been in contact. And Steve does a lot of great gear also when it comes to studio recording. And he's not only a great amp designer. Maybe you heard about VHT amps. This was his first company. Now he's going under Fryette. And there's the Power Station, which is kind of a combination of a power soak with reactive load and a real tube power amp. And he actually told me that when he released it, he asked me, and I gave him some interesting input on the whole thing. Anyway, it was so cool to have that interview with Stephen Fryette, and it was very long. It's, I think, longer than our Academy of Tones. I think it was 2 hours 45, and my earbuds always lost power, so at the end I had to change the earbuds quite a lot. Anyway, so this was Stephen Fryette I wanted to talk about, and at the MetalCon there was a lot of Fryette gear due to Jürgen Kirchner, and this is the Deliverance amp. That's one of the amps that Christian Kohle was using in his seminar. And this, for instance, was the power stations I just talked about. And then he has a switching system. This is where the cable goes in to switch between different amps. Like my amp switcher here, but just bigger and better. And on top there is a very clever multi-function recording device also for reamping things, but we come to this later. The thing about miking up speakers is one way of doing it. It's the old school way of doing it. It still works, and it's probably in some situations maybe still the best. On the other hand, these days we have more options. We can go digital with IRs, impulse responses. But in every field, if you are using a mic or if you are using an IR, every field can also have multiple microphones or multiple IRs that can be mixed. I mean, remember, I had the two mics in front of my silent cap, and well, I have the options of mixing them. I can use only one, and I have to decide if I like the SM7 better or the FM57, for instance, or I use a condenser mic, or I make any kind of ribbon 57 combination, you know, all these things that people talk about these days. And I can also blend two mics. And let me show you this real briefly. I'm going back for the iridium, and where is my... So that's the SM7B. And that's the 57. So I kind of prefer the 7. But let's check what happens when I blend in some of the 57 on top of the SM7B. So this last setting here is more SM57 than SM7, kind of a bitier version. The other way around. That would be my choice. Knowing that it's maybe a little bit too fat in the mix. And that's something you will find out once you have tracks recorded and play it with the band or with the other instruments. Okay, I see a lot of questions here. Let me check if there's something going on. Okay, power station. Thomas, do you know Judon Rooney? Who is this guy? I know the name, but I don't know who is it. Dave Matai. Sounds like a guitar of a hair metal band, guitar player. Maybe I'm wrong. He recently spoke about me in an interview in Vertex Effect. Ah, okay. So. Yeah, I think I saw that, but not really. Okay, Tina Thomas, could you, that stack 1980 BluBox is a GT70 instead of H75. In the stack, could it be that the stack 1980 BluBox is a GT75 instead of H75? You might be right, because that's the what is the Marshall model number? 36, 4x12, that classic 4x12 from the 80s. And they used to have T75. Maybe you are right. So you love stacks 67, 70, and especially the 1980. Yeah, we're coming to this in a minute. Okay. This is all about BluBox in a minute. Okay, what else is going on? Sorry, I'm only joking. I only want to do something in my home. Yeah, okay, hobby. What are your analog mic preamps for your mics? Well, at this point, the cheesiest one ever, because it's the Behringer mixing console sitting in the room, which was a freebie from a friend of mine. You need a mixer for your live stream. Here we go, and this is what I use at this point. if I would use proper mic preamps, I have a V76 upstairs in my studio, but I also have a device that I also designed with a company that is kind of nearly forgotten, which is the Micprint DTC. Ta-da! Dual tube channel. And this is a combination of mic preamp with a special Haufe, I think is a German brand, input transformer. You know, all the studio guys go, yeah, my stuff is so special and esoteric and it's blah, 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 blah. Anyway, it sounds killer. And then it is combined with an EQ section that we kind of stole a little bit from the massive passive tube EQ. Massive passive is very old school tube equalizer, and I have one of those as well. And this is inspired by doing that. It's not using a tube, but it's designed similar using transistors. And then there's a compressor section that also features a tube. And yeah, that's something I used a lot to record my guitars with. And this kind of passive EQ is not so drastic or aggressive. You can just turn the knobs, dial in tones, and they sound always pretty round in a way. Even when I boost high ends, the high frequencies, it never hurts, and that's a quality that I think is what I want in the studio. I want high end, but I want soft high end. You can boost the same frequency, but it should never hurt your ears. And this little Behringer cheapo desk in the studio, it's harsh when you boost. If you have such a cheap EQ, it's always better to reduce the frequencies. So if you want more highs, reduce the rest, don't boost them. That is the way how you get smoother sounding sounds out of cheap EQs. If you have a real tube EQ or something, somebody talks about Brauner microphones, yeah, there's a lot of high-end stuff in the market. Yeah, Sonja Schellenberg says medley is massive passive. Medley, they do a full range of what is called a Vox box. It's a mic preamp, studio classics, and I use them. I like to use them because they are very intuitive. I simply twist the knobs and till I like the sound, and then I also use it for designing the amps. And you know, if I need some kind of sounds flat, I need some fresh frequency things, and then I dial it in, and then we measure the curve. And that's the thing about a massive passive by Manley or those old school tube EQs. The curve is never a weird thing. It's always a very smooth, organic thing, even if the settings are totally extreme. And that's something I like about these kind of EQs. There are other situations where you need more precise EQs, like with very narrow bandwidth, and if you have like only one resonant rumble frequency and you want to get rid of those, a massive passive is not the best choice. But this is studio, different world, different tools, and it's endless. Trust me, when you go into studio mode, you go down the rabbit hole, and 10 to 20 years later, we talk again. I've been there, but honestly, I skipped that for at least as long as BluGuitar exists, or existed, or still exists, but I mean, I'm talking about the last 10 years because I didn't have any time for that. And I know studio work and following up with all the options and plugins these days simply takes time. There was a time 20 years ago where I was at the peak. I was having the latest whatever version of the programs, the latest plugins and everything. But I skipped that lately because I focus on different things. Designing guitar amps and making music. And when recording music, I make my life simple, out of experience. So what I'm saying about the microphones is they're still around and they are still great. And by the way, you need the microphones if you want to do your own IRs. The IRs don't come from nothing. You need to have a source, a speaker and a microphone, or several speakers and several microphones, and this is where it all starts. And for instance, in the BluBox, there are a few speaker sounds that are actually only using one microphone, and there are other sounds where I try to recreate the sound of certain cabinets where I had to use several microphones, and even like I blended them together. I had one that gave me a little bit of the low end and one that gave me that shimmering highs, and another one that had something sweet in the middle. And then, you know, I was combining the different microphones to get, or mic positions, to get a final sound that I liked, and that became the final IR that you find in the BluBox today. And that's the same for everybody that makes IR impulse responses. I mean, the impulse loaders do the thing. They simply use that convolution technology, and well, that recreates the EQ curve of that impulse that you send through a speaker. And most of the units simply do that only. I personally tweaked the BluBox a little bit to my liking because I can. my preamps, wait a minute, where's my, here there's more, you know, there's the two notes, another example. But my concept of the BluBox was fairly simple. It was like my speaker collection, and I have a few, as you can see already here, in this room, in that room. This are just the two Marshall cabinets of that generation. And there is some more. Some I just took the speakers and they're sitting in the next room. But then you see, you know, the combos here and the tweet which is there and the Vox and basically all the speakers of my amp collection. And they have been used in the studio for many, many, many years. And I know why I bought them and why they are still here, because they worked fine for certain things. They have proven to be useful. There's a BluBox. I think today we have a luxury situation here. There's a BluBox, there's a BluBox, and there's a BluBox. So 3 BluBoxes in the house. They make babies, I don't know. Something's wrong here with the BluBoxes. And there are days where I can only find one or none in here. But this is, yeah. I wanted to show you a little bit these cabinets that are in the BluBox. Yeah, there's this picture, maybe, no, this way. you know, there are my Vox, my Princeton, the Tweed Deluxe, the cabinet we are sitting in front of. This is the this is the Fender. Yeah, this is the cabinet just here in the corner, you know. So, you know, that's my cabinet collection. And as you can see, some of them don't have the electronics because I took the chassis out of the housing with the speakers. It's more practical because sometimes you just take the electronics and use another speaker. So you are more free to make, again, choices on combinations. And that's the big rabbit hole about what is a great sound. Okay, I have seen the comments here about the BluBox, but let's generalize it. BluBox is an IR loader. What is special about a BluBox? Well, it's actually limited to 16 cabinets only and a very simple mic position knob that kind of does similar things to moving the mic in front of the cone. And that's as simple as can be. And one thing I added is this clip LED, and that indicates a smooth soft clip which is analog, and this is shaping the static IR, because usually the IRs are not dynamic. They now became dynamic. Maybe after I talked about it for the Amp X, everybody thought, oh, now we have to have dynamic IRs. But before that, it wasn't the case. And I faked a little bit of that dynamic with my soft clip in the BluBox, and I kind of find it very musical. Let me show you something simple. Okay, switch off everything. Bam. Okay, studio mode. I'm using one BluBox only, which is the main one, like this one. Ah man, this guitar is out of tune. So that's my favorite Stack 1970. Maybe you have seen that. And we heard some people even prefer the Stack 1980, which is that one. So I usually turn down the mic position a hair. Okay, this was a little bit far, from 12 o'clock to like 11. That's my personal taste. I'm the guy that is more into the vintage world, and this is where I think the high end is sweeter. Okay, this is actually using the modern channel on the Iridium, so a pretty aggressive sound into this cabinet. Yeah, just a few sounds so you hear. This, for instance, is Stack 65. I think that's also a great sound, but you have to use a different mic position setting to make that come alive with such a sound, okay? But the next time I'm using a Strat and a whatever crunch tone, and then I'm using a different cabinet and a different setting. At the first glance, it looks like, oh, it's only 16 cabinets and only this one control. On the other hand, it's like, hey, you have fast results because you find something and you like that cabinet as a general direction, and then you tweak it and you are done. And that's something which I believe is very, very, very important in the studio, because otherwise you start with some things and you will never finish, you will never end. You will spend so many hours just of maybe this was better and I want that option and maybe I remake that another day and blah, blah, blah. So what I learned over the years is I can make decisions. If I like a certain tone, I know this will work, that's my tone, and I have only one track and I'm done, which makes the whole production an easy thing. And by the way, you know, all the latest records that I have recorded since the BluBox is out, like this, for instance, it's all BluBox. I do have the microphones in the next room, but I don't use them anymore because the BluBox is faster and sounds killer. It's on the records. I kind of like it even better sometimes than the mics. And whatever setup you are using, I mean, it could be also whatever your torpedo or, you know, whatever you have chosen for your speaker emulation or your speaker and mic, whatever is your sound is fine. And I think the struggle to find your sound is the hard part. And then afterwards, it's just like you find your guitar. There's your guitar and bam, how many other guitars do you need? If you are honest, usually you have one favorite guitar and maybe one favorite amp or channel in your amp. And that's, once you have taken the decision, that's my number one guitar, my number one speaker, my number one amp, or you know, and my number one way of miking it up, you start to make music and you don't get lost in too many options. So that's, to me, a super, super important part of recording guitars. Don't lose the momentum of creativity. In the end, you make music, and if you get stuck with too many options and too many sound fights, it will never end. Okay, so BluBox, and I show you what you can do with two BluBoxes, which I have done on my Rock Anarchy live album. And the way I have done that is I did record my regular BluBox, but I also took the iBox in parallel. My mic is making noise. Is it better? Hopefully, okay. With such a DI box that has a pad function, maybe you can see there is a minus 20 dB switch, and these are quarter-inch jacks. So what I have done was something very simple. I simply had this connected in parallel to the speaker out, like using the two speaker outs on the amp. One goes to the one and the other one goes to the other one, to this box. And then I was recording the XLR output of the DI box, of course with the minus 20 dB switch, because the speaker volume that goes into the quarter-inch is pretty loud. You know, stage volume means 30 volts or 50 volts. And this needs to be XLR level, in most cases microphone level, and therefore you have to use the pad function to reduce the level. But using a DI box like that is also great, because in the DI box is a transformer for the ground isolation. So you have a clean signal of the power amp sound without any speaker. And what I have done later in the studio when mixing the album, I reamped. I had that unprocessed signal also recorded at the same time as my reels, and I was using that with a second BluBox. And what I have done is I used two different speaker simulation sounds and blended them together and used them a little bit in stereo. So the guitar is, well, it's wider and it's different. Let me demonstrate. So this is one BluBox. I start with my stack 1970. So there is another BluBox. Sorry, this was not the BluBox, this was the recording out of the Iridium. It's also a nice source, by the way, because it has a speaker simulation built in, and that's how that's done. Okay, but I wanted a second BluBox, which is on this channel, sorry. And this needs to be put in the middle. Sounds like this. So this one is the Metal Seal 80, a little bit more aggressive. And that one is my stack 1970. Let's compare. So, and what I do next is I pan them in stereo. And now I have, if you can hear stereo, I have a different sound with two cabinets. Okay, pretty heavy combination. Okay, wall of sound. Versus, okay, I have to pen this now in the middle and make it the same volume. Sounds good, but this sounds maybe better. Where's the second channel? Okay, and this works so nice because when I designed the BluBox, I was making sure all the cabinets are in phase. The BluBox first has the less latency than any other IR loader on the planet. We are talking 0.6 milliseconds. This is double. And all the others sometimes even more. And when you are using more than one source, which is one microphone or one IR loader, or you have to make sure that these signals are in phase. If you have two mics in a different distance to the speaker, you will have phase issues because the speed of sound exists and the bigger this distance, the more latency you get. And by adding two signals with not the same phase, you will cancel a few frequencies, and that gets bizarre and ugly. So that's the thing. Always remember, be in phase. So we had mics that we can blend together. We have IRs that we can blend together. And when you kind of blend together two of those different categories, mind that a mic might be very short latency, because literally none, because it's very close to the speaker. And the IR loader, especially when you have one of these, has a latency. And that kind of latency will fuck up your sound because of the phase cancellation. Well, phaser. This is where it's coming from. A phaser is such a thing, modulated. But it's great to mix, like the direct out of the amp1 with a microphone, because there's no latency and the microphone has no latency. And even the direct out with the BluBox is still okayish. If you want to have it spot on when you do the mix, you should have the two tracks and use the phase reverse switch on one channel, and then have a little delay by samples and move the track so it cancels out as much as possible, and then flip the phase back to the same in-phase position. That's the way to do it properly in the studio. But I can mix a BluBox and a direct or a micro and the direct easily and get great results. So that's the thing in my world. Okay, like. That is now the BluBox and the direct out. The direct out is the most direct thing you can have, which can be a quality. I mean, talking about Rammstein, for instance, they go direct for certain sounds because maximum brutality. It can be great. There's a quality about everything. All the options have their own beauty. Yeah. Ah, by the way, the beauty of simplicity is my first solo record, and the intro track. No, it was done on the recording sessions of this album, but was released on the 21st Century Guitar. Now I come back. Anyway, so that's the art of miking or using IRs. Let me watch the comments here. M1 have a power tube, the nano tube. Seitenschuft. The M1 has a tube, yes. It is working in the power amp stage, but it's not a power tube. It's a sub-miniature tube. If it would be a proper power tube, it would be that big, and it would rattle when I would do this. You do hear a little bit, but not as much as a classic 6L6 or EL34 or KD88 or KD66 or one of those proper power tubes. We do special designs at BluGuitar. This works in the power amp, but the power itself is not the tube, but the tube works in that analog circuitry that recreates the tube amp behavior, and that's important. Okay, what's going on here? It would be great when you can offer the BluBox IRs as download WAV files as well. Yeah, if you are dirty, buy a BluBox, make IRs of it and use them, because I'm lazy. Did it myself, by the way. And the IRs as they are in the BluBox, I still have on exactly this old laptop here. They don't sound exactly like the BluBox because the analog part of the circuitry adds some little character, and that's actually missing. So get a BluBox, make your own IR, and use it. So we are happy because you bought a BluBox. We have them on stock in our shop. Unfortunately not with dealers these days because the chip used in that BluBox is not in production anymore, and we have to buy old stocks and collect them, and then when we have enough we make a new production run, and it's way too expensive. Anyway, are the BluBox IRs different compared to traditional IRs? I found the BluBox has so much fidelity and more pleasing tone. I do run the BluBox with some clipping as well. Yes, Bill, that's something about a BluBox. When I design a product, I start with IRs that I like, and then I put the IRs on my device, and then I tweak the device, and the result is how I hear the cabinet. And in every step, some of my taste is kind of influencing what I'm doing, and therefore I'm not using my mics anymore. The BluBox gives me instant results and even better. One thing about the BluBox, when I do things like using the BluBox, and I have a speaker connected, which I do have on the other output of the M1, the BluBox has that through where usually the speaker is connected, and wow, loud. Let me show you on one BluBox only. Mute the rest, one BluBox, and it's this one. So when I have a speaker, the amp reacts to the speaker. That is why people invent the reactive load, because the amp reacts to the speaker load. And since I know that, I have like a general compensation in the BluBox. And now let's hear the difference. So this is as it should be. And this is how it's not officially not wanted, but anything is okay if you like it. More high end, maybe you can hear. Oops. Did I kill anything? So that's now without the plug. I think it's, well, it is brighter in a way, and the compensation is a general thing. It's not 100% precise because I don't know what kind of speaker is connected. So, but this is what you should do if you are using a BluBox and you have not connected your speaker to this through, but here, because it's more convenient, you can do that. But then you should have a plug that is not connected, open. So no contact, no shortcut, anything. Just using the mechanics of this socket here to tell, kind of to fool the BluBox and have the BluBox on the mode, hey, speaker connected. So that's the way. Okay, question here I have seen is, what is my best load box, my favorite load box for, I'm a Marshall fan, as we all can see, and I have an old SE100. And to me that's still maybe the best load. And there are some other great loads out there, but that's my favorite. That's the answer. Okay, so what we learned is we can have two speakers kind of and mix them, make sure they are in phase, and you can play around with that mixing of speaker IRs or speakers. Always make sure in phase, or with microphones, or with microphones and IRs. But to create the wall of sound, usually you play more than one track. And that is something I will do real quick with my laptop. Oops. Are we still talking? Yes, we are. Oh. Scroll back at the beginning. Hello. Huh? Ah. So here we go. And I will record a few tracks. Wait a minute. Okay, that's a typical studio job. You go and simply record track after track. Let me do that, okay? Here we go. So this is track number 1. That makes smaller. So I put that down here so I can play it back. And here we are. Let's hear it. Okay, so we got that, and I do another track, mute, or no, let's listen to it, but not at this high volume. And doubling is the game. Okay. Sorry, I was recording on the wrong track. This is where my input is. Okay, and here we go. Track number 2, we take that, put it on this channel so we can play that back, and now we have 2 guitars panned in left and right. Okay, so you get the picture. What I would do with the next performance would simply be use a different sound. Maybe use a different channel. Okay, let's say I mute this one for now, so I'm not. I have the first one as rhythmic guide. Oh, forgot record to press record. One more time. So that was track number 3, and that sounds differently. And I do a 4th one, maybe just for fun. I switch to another BluBox to have another sound. And I use the vintage channel. So this is kind of like using different amps, different cabinets, playing the same riff and creating the wall of sound. Let's record that one as well. Excuse me, let's go back. Here we go. So, quick and dirty, we could go on with even more sounds, but what I wanted to demonstrate is in modern production, you hear a lot of double sounds, which kind of sounds like this. Maybe now we have too much guitars, but listen. Okay, you get the picture. It is several tracks penned left and right. We could work on the volume now and make, you know, these lower in volume, this a little bit harder, and find, you know, aspects of each track that fit best in the mix and that makes it the best grip. So when you're listening to a modern production, especially in metal, if there's a wall of sound, there might be a lot of different guitars. And the way how to do that is laying down different tracks and sometimes having the different tracks also recorded with different amps or channels, with different cabinets, because that makes the wall of sound perfect. You can kind of fill every gap in the wall and make the guitars massive. That's one way. The other way is like AC/DC. You have one great guitar tone on the Malcolm side and one great guitar tone on the Angus side, and you live with that, and that's killer too. I'm not saying this is better than the other. It all depends on what sound you are striving for. And the good thing on an Amp 1 and a BluBox is you have a lot of options. You have, just talking about overdrive sounds for this kind of music or this kind of guitar we had just recorded here. There's the vintage, the classic, and the modern channel that can be used, and then there are all the different cabinets. You can come up with endless variations that have a slightly different texture. And yeah, when you record these tracks, you have to make sure that your timing is pretty good. I was a bit sloppy. Let's turn the volume down a bit, but it is the micro timing that is different in every recording, in every track that you recorded, that makes it wider, because it's two guys, it's the AC/DC sound, and then when you have that, if you record 4 tracks, it's like 2 AC/DCs playing at the same time. That's kind of interesting. You can also change voicings in the chords and stuff like that. So that's guitar arrangement. But I wanted to focus a bit more on the sounds when you do the recording. And here comes the point where I would like to show you the seminar that I attended at the MetalCon with Christian Kohle, which I believe was great because he and his team in his studio recorded spot on metal tones, because that's his profession, but it's the same for any kind of music. And I learned also that we share so many things as general rules in the studio. He works very intuitive and things like that. I have a clip that is kind of a short summary of his 2.5 hour clinic. and there are a few well, bits and pieces you can take with that. Let's watch that clip and you get an impression of what he's doing. Generally, what he is doing is reamping, which means he recorded his guitar with a super preamp, something like this, and had a fully dry signal from the guitar on his DAW, and with a special reamping box he could use several different amplifiers. I have a few pictures of the amps that he had. One of them was the Fryette Deliverance and the Lichtlärm, and then on the other side there was a rectifier and the Sound City, you know, all different amps, and he combined those amps also with pedals, like there was the classic Tube Screamer, you know, and then finally he had even the heavy metal HM2 Swedish dirty ugly sounding sound. And his arrangement of sounds is to have good and proper sounding amps in focus that are louder, and then add some dirt with that metal pedal and with the other amps to fill kind of the gaps and having like, yeah, contrasts. And of course he is about metal, which means tight, but on the other hand also and dirty. And the way, yeah, he was doing it, we can see in this video. Enjoy.
Let's start with giving you an overview of the setup. We have the iTracks inside Cubase. It's a very basic setup. We basically just have drums, bass, and rhythm guitars. The cool thing is that we have 4 rhythm guitars, so I played everything 4 times. That means we can blend, we can like send each pair of the iTracks into a different setup, which means we can blend 2 different guitar tones to hopefully something bigger. We've got my good old dual rectifier, 2-channel. We've got the Fryette Deliverance, an amp that I've been using lately quite a lot, which is maybe a little more linear sounding than the rectifier. Rectifier has like huge low end and huge aggressive highs and a little more scoop. This one is a little more linear, but also quite flexible to tweak. Then we have a little wild card here. This is a Sound City amp, also made by Stephen Fryette. Very different texture than this and a lot less tight, but I really wanted to try it. I had an orange amp with me that I'm not using because this one sounds more different, and he's hoping that we can get like a more sludgy tone out of this one that we might combine, I don't know. And number 4 is the Prometheus from Lichtlärm. That is also a very cool amp and has been hyped lately for a good reason. And this one has 2 channels. It has a high gain channel and a clean channel. And the high gain channel sounds great, but it's maybe not different enough for this setup that I want to use it. I'm mainly using this one for the clean channel, which turned out to take pedals really well. Talking about which, we have a Tube Screamer. I'm mostly using a Tube Screamer to tighten the tone. Then we have a pedal called Smarv, which I recently showed in a YouTube video. We have an HM2, I guess that you all know, Swedish chainsaw. And this one is a pedal I designed with someone that was never released. We wanted to call it Gorlando because it's based on like Florida death metal, Valve State kind of thing. Haven't tried it for a while. So you see we have a few options. We have 3 cabinets connected. I can switch between 2 Mesa cabs simultaneously. One is a standard Mesa with V30s, also connected to another one. They're wired in series with a total load of 16 ohm. Another Mesa cab that I have bastardized with 2 of my Carnivore prototypes and 2 Jensen speakers that I also like well. By the way, when I came home yesterday, this had arrived. I'm very proud of this. This is my upcoming signature speaker that you are about to hear. And this is actually the first one I own that actually looks like a carnivore with this beautiful red. Yeah. And I can also switch between those two cabs simultaneously, and I can switch to a Fryette 4x12 loaded with custom speakers from Fame. One thing that is cool about the Fryette cab switcher is that for every single setting, let's say you switch to the rectifier and to the Fryette cab, you can determine the impedance of the amp and the impedance of the cab setup. So you can have one 16 ohm cab and an 8 ohm cab and a 4 ohm cab connect, doesn't matter, you just have to program it once. So if you switch to that cab, it automatically adjusts the impedance so everything works. The third cabinet option we have, number 3, that is connected right now, is a lot of Fryette stuff. This is what it's called, Power Load IR. So this is basically just a load box and an IR loader, but I'm just using the load box and actually also only the passive part of it, so it's not even connected to. So basically I can switch between the real cabs and this thing. What you are seeing here basically is these are the 8 inputs from the 8 microphones that we have connected. And here, channel number 9, if I switch to the power load, I get the amps go into the load box, and then I have some IRs loaded here. You see Carnivore 1 and 2. On the cabinets, we have 5 microphones on the bastardized Boogie cab. So I have 2 57s on the Carnivores, 1 each. Then my idea was to have like a very different sounding microphone on the same speaker. Maybe we don't need it, maybe we need, I don't know. So on the first Carnivore, I also have a ribbon microphone, a really classic beefy ribbon mic from Sontronics. On the other one, I have a 57 and a Neumann TLM 193 large diaphragm condenser mic. Then we have just 157 on the standard Mesa cab that I haven't even listened to. On the Fryette cab, we have a 57 and a biodynamic M160 ribbon. And finally, we got another wild card, the Sontronics Halo, like a weird looking microphone on one of the Jensen speakers down there in the cab. Also haven't heard that one. I think I tried it at home and it seems to be a very aggressive sounding microphone. The only thing we have to think about is, because we have 4 DI tracks, and it's actually the first time I'm thinking about this in this moment, so we just got to think about which DI tracks we use for which tones, you know. So we've got DIs 1 and 2, and 3 and 4, and if you reamp DIs 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 to different setups, they're gonna sound phasey. You gotta use different takes. So we can only combine one tone that is based on DI 1 and 2 with another tone that is based on DI 3 and 4. Lots of talking. Let's have a listen to the song. With music like this, where there's basically just rhythm guitars, not a lot of melody, and where it's just supposed to sound evil and aggressive, I try to combine a, let's say, traditionally good sounding guitar tone, like this one, just something, you know, everybody likes, with something like this. This is actually a Grindstein, I don't remember the details, but you see, if you play this without the dirty track, it just gives you like another layer, and then you can really like adjust the amount of dirt that you want from like really clean. something a little more gnarly and sludgy. And I love doing that kind of combination. I do that all the time. And having 4 DI tracks is really cool. If all guitars play the same thing, which is except for one melody there is the case here, you can just like, you know, balance them just the way you want, or even do it like differently on different riffs. So that's what we're gonna try. Hopefully come up with something that just, yeah, that sounds just as good or even better. Switching between, this is the double 57 setup, Carnivore plus V30. And this is the single EQ'd ribbon on the Carnivore. Just 2 tracks. I don't have to explain the difference, but this is something very much usable. It just goes into different directions, more mid-rangey or more aggressive. Right now, I think the first one sounds a little more mix-ready. With some EQ, the other one might work as well, so that's both good. Let's start with this. Now let's have a listen to our different dirty tones. Maybe start just without the beautiful sound. And this is where the spice comes from, right? So let's just start with our main beautiful tracks, and then I'll switch between adding different other ones, okay? So that you see the one that is highlighted, this one, and then I go to this one, which is the HM2, and then I'll go to that one. Don't know how the balance is now, but let's see.
Yeah, you could see with how much attention to detail Christian Kohle was adding and arranging the different tracks that he recorded and reamped. What I liked about his way of working is he was always in a flow. I mean, you know, he plays the mic and he probably thought, oh, this is a little bit dull, so I increased the high ends. And he didn't care about if it was a certain frequency. He trusted his ears and his instinct because he knows what he wants. And yeah, so it's like sculpturing the sound in different layers, and each individual layer has to be recorded, has to be shaped, and then you add the next, and then of course you have the option of blending how much of the dirty tone you want to the clean tone, but it's nice to have those options. We have a picture of the mic'd up cabinets that were in the ISO room. So you can see there was the oversized Mesa cabinet, I think with a 57 as far as I can see. I forgot about it. You can see that what's the idea is having different amps and different cabinets to record different sounds. And this can be done, well, as you can see, with whatever sounds good and then mixed with stuff that sounds also good but different, and even with stuff that sounds ugly, because a little bit of grind does add some character. So what is happening in a AC/DC is a tag of producer artist. Okay, yeah, there's tons of stock Aitken Waterman. These are the pop producers from the 90s. We are talking Rick Astley and, you know, those plastic productions from back in the days. But anyway, these producers, everybody has a little bit their own taste and their own recipe. And I think even bands like ABBA, they created a wall of sound by adding several tracks. That's slightly different from the puristic way of let's say, Deep Purple recording, where you hear one Ritchie Blackmore guitar. Sometimes you hear two. I mean, like Highway Star, there's a rhythm guitar and there's a solo, and then even harmonies and things like that. But there are a lot of bands where you can, like AC/DC, where you just have the band as pure as can be without all the gimmicks. I'm not saying this is better, I'm just saying this is better for AC/DC. And if you want to create a certain sound and wall of sound, then laying down tracks is the way to go. Yeah, this was that was a nice seminar. Then there was a seminar about how to do drums, and there were people with outboard gear and, you know, EQs and gates and whatnot. Yeah, somebody loves ABBA. There's nothing wrong about ABBA. They wrote great tunes. And of course, not everybody can afford an expensive microphone, but if you experiment, you will find great tones also with cheap microphones. For instance, what I learned when I was on tour the other week, 2 weeks ago, I had a vocal mic with a switch. I like to switch off my mic because I'm not singing much, only for the harmony parts. And for the rest, I don't want to destroy the sound by having an open mic, so I can switch it off. And I had a cheapo Behringer microphone, you know, one of those mics that costs whatever, 19 euros, nothing. And it actually sounded better than the mic for my voice that the professional PA companies had, like SM58. Great microphone, but with that cheapo microphone, my voice was just perfect and done. What I'm trying to say is it's not all about money, it's more about taste. If you know what you want to hear, like Christian, you know there are several ways to get there. Of course, you have some proven concepts that you used in the past that you can really rely on, and of course you probably take some of those again. But once you have ears, and trained ears, you will find a way to get almost anything sounding good, tweaking it, if it's a decent signal. Okay, I want to round it up with an interview that I have done with Christian after his seminar, and he also showed me his own speaker that he designed with Eminence. Yeah, this speaker we had no real time to listen to it, but that's something for the future, because I also design my own speakers for BluGuitar, and I have done this process for many, many years, and I'm curious about what he was searching in his signature speaker. Of course, he has different genre. Metal is not blues rock, but I think there's a lot of qualities that are very, very similar in all kinds of guitars. We are all about mids, we are all about clarity, we are all about low end and warmth, and yeah, that's a natural thing, and you find that in any kind of music. So that's something, when we have some time in the future, we will talk. Maybe I'm coming to his place or he's coming here. We'll see, and then we talk speakers. But yeah, let's watch that interview about how he works in the studio. I found this inspiring and reminded me a lot of the way I work or worked. Lately, I don't have that time anymore, but I've done this probably 20 years as on a regular basis as a job, and getting money for it as well. So I think a few things have changed. I've never done so much reamping like today, but double tracking, you know, all the frequency talks are still the same. So yeah, it is the studio vibe. Yeah, enjoy my interview with Christian, and see you again next week, same place, with maybe something about these guitars. I have some idea. Yeah, okie doke. Enjoy Christian Kohle, and see you next week. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, a real big pleasure to have Chris Kohle here. Yeah, I just was watching his seminar, and I was actually deeply impressed with how much attention to detail you kind of
put into the noise that I'm making, right?
Yeah,
into
yeah.
the caveman jugga 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 stuff.
Yeah. And the layering of different sounds with the reamping that you have done is, it's actually a killer. So if I listen to the wall of sound, there is lots more behind it, and I kind of like the attitude of maxing out all the frequency ranges in the mids, in the low ends, and you get a certain character from this amp and microphone combination combined with this. My question is two things. I haven't seen a really scientific approach, like I do the phase of everything with this kind of signal and align it. You are doing it mainly by ears?
Yes.
With phase cancellation?
Yes. So I'm typically trying to have a lot of microphones available during a sound check. So I have a lot of options. Sometimes you only need one. Yeah. That's fine. Sometimes you want to have 2 or 3. And knowing the character of the mic helps. And I usually try to have them at the same, more or less the same distance of the cab. Yeah. What I do then is I put them together. I flip the phase on one of them.
Sure.
And I adjust the volume, and I adjust the delay, like slide delay, sample-based delay of the microphones to make them cancel out if one of them has the phase switched. And
that is your kind of getting it in phase.
Exactly.
Once you flipped it back.
Right. But it's not something, it's just like making sure I'm in the ballpark. Yeah. It's not like if you flip the phase and it's not getting a lot more quiet, you're doing something wrong. Yeah, and from there on, I flip it back, and from there on, it's basically just listening and going for what I think is nice. Yeah. And during the sound check, like you said, I usually go for the biggest thing I can achieve. Yeah. And for me, it's actually easier later in the mix, depending on if there's a lot of other tracks or not. Sometimes, like here, the guitars are really the main rhythm guitars are the main thing. And then other mixers might have acoustic guitars, keyboards, other stuff.
They have to leave a little bit more space for the other instruments.
Exactly, but that's something I like to use EQ for later. So I try to have like a big sound, and then use EQ not to make it sound great, but to just adjust it so it sits right in the mix. Don't use EQ if you need whatever, if you don't have low end to boost it later. No. That's something that should be fixed right from the start.
So I learned in my past in the studio that it's not a good idea to blow up sounds. It's easier to reduce the sound and tailor them and put them in their niche or wherever you have the space for it. But if you boost anything, it's artificial, it sounds
exactly, especially on distorted guitars. I mean, you can do it to a certain amount. It depends a little on the microphone, but in general, it's like as the more you can get it right at the source, the easier it is later, because you don't have to put a lot of work into it. And like you said, especially with distorted guitars, doesn't matter if it's heavy rock or grindcore, especially with all the overtones there is a difference between using an EQ later and just either moving a mic to get more highs or turning up the presence or something like this.
It's way more organic. And what I like at your approach is also you take decisions at the moment when you feel them. And I think that's people that are waiting for the decisions in the phase 5 or 10, they will never stop, and you lose the flow in the production.
Absolutely.
And I think this is also something that trains you as a person, as an engineer, to
commit.
It's like, okay, I like this, bam, I stand behind, this is what we want.
Exactly, because I feel like me as a mixing engineer especially, if you leave too many decisions up to the end, it's overwhelming. Because there's enough to do in a mix. So for example, I don't want to have 3 microphone tracks per guitar performance. Then I end up with whatever 12 different tracks and I have to fiddle around. If I can make that decision during the sound check, it's gone. I don't like recording DI tracks. That might be a surprise. But I usually just record a final tone, just one track. Because I'm pretty confident with what I'm doing. But this also forces me into making those decisions at the start, at the moment. And also, like with bands, it's like they can't come up and tell you, hey, why don't you reamp this again through the Diesel? Can you try this? Can you try that? No, we made that decision. Same with choosing the right snare, choosing the right, whatever. And that's how it used to be. So maybe it has to do with
older
age.
guys.
Yes, older
like
guys
us.
as well. But yeah, it's. I see a lot of young people being overwhelmed by too many possibilities in the end.
I think that's a big problem in this world in general. I mean, too much information, and what is the core thing is missing. Because that's the thing that finally cuts through. If it's music, if it's a mix, if it's a sound, and you have this is a bold statement if it's right.
Right, exactly. But it's the same in the guitar world. If you compare us being young, having maybe 1 amp or 2 amps, being limited to that. And maybe 1 microphone and 1 cab, and now playing some kind of digital rig, which might sound fantastic, but where you can choose between 100 amps.
And then it's like endless.
Right, and then it doesn't matter if you're 15 or if you're 35, it's just overwhelming. I hate that. So that's why I don't like digital, because it just gives me too much, and
I mean, you are doing IRs, like based on your mic'd up cabinets and stuff. Have you tried to combine those IRs that you made with reamped stuff that is still analog?
I've tried that. I also sometimes combine. You can combine IRs.
I've done that.
Yeah, just like you do. I've tried that. It's a little tricky with the phase.
That's the biggest thing.
Right.
I have done this even in my own products, like in the BluBOX. I have recreated some cabinets using different mics at different speakers, 4x12, and then had them in an IR loader, and then made an IR from like 6 IRs that I had.
Yeah, exactly. I usually also do. Try to combine. I think I would always create IRs and then later mix those IRs together. Then you can easily get them in phase. Because phase can be a bitch, especially if you combine something digital and something analog.
It is quite apart. I mean, the digital has 6 milliseconds or 1.5, whatever, and the analog is probably 0.10.
Exactly,
shorter.
or depending how you put the mic, and the digital, if you use analog digital conversion, that always delays a few samples. So yeah, but it's fun.
Of course, and that's the thing that I enjoyed at your seminar. I can feel that you are playing with the sounds. You create, you know, the mean sound, and then the clean sound, and the fucked up sound.
Yes.
And then you're striving for character in each approach, and then going on the next level, blending those together to see how dirty you want it to be and how clean you want it to be.
Yeah.
And the whole thing you do using the flow. You know, your constant decision making tells you, I want a little bit more of that EQ here for that. You know,
and it's just wonderful if this works. I mean, sometimes it doesn't, you know, and also depends on what the client wants and so on. But it's wonderful if you can go on that journey, that adventure, and try stuff. Sometimes be a little more courageous, sometimes be a little more safe, you know,
conservative.
Exactly. Yeah. And just try stuff. And this is, by the way, the other big difference between digital and analog.
Yeah.
Because I'm also using the Kemper amp a lot, only with my own profiles. But I'm not saying that thing doesn't sound great. Yeah. You can make fantastic sounding records with it. Digital is fine. But I even catch myself always going back to Kohlekeller DTC 5. Your preset-based playing, and then do you actually tweak it? Yeah, you could go into the menu and do some stuff, but nah.
No, you make music.
It sounds great. Yeah. So I have never come up with something mind-blowingly new or something fresh or some new ideas by using the Kemper. But whenever I do something like this, you know, today you saw me EQing a ribbon mic. Extremely.
When you put 15 dBs on the high end.
Exactly. And that's something I hardly do. I think I've never gone that extreme, but that's what I've learned today. Hey, if you have a good sounding EQ,
it works.
Right. Yeah. That's the inspiration I get from analog. I'm not saying that if you capture that it doesn't sound the same, but it makes me dial in more interesting tones.
Yeah.
Me.
And that's a workflow thing.
Yeah.
And that's also, I totally agree on the whole thing, because I work the same way. When I get stuck in my flow, it's the end of my day. The whole thing, I'm not productive anymore.
Yeah, right.
And that's the beauty of analog and having interactive processes with knobs and not too many menus.
Exactly.
That's,
yeah.
Okay, and I hope to see you in the future, because you have designed a speaker, which is
I got to show you my speaker. I'm coming up with a signature speaker with eminence called the Carnivore. Actually, today I received the final version, so I'm gonna send you one or show you one or whatever.
Will we do something with it?
We'll figure it out, and once you got your new stuff ready, I'll check it out as well.
Yeah. Hey.
Thanks for having me on the channel for the first time, right?
Yeah, first time ever. We met each other so many times at trade shows and at flights to
even on a plane to LA, right?
Yeah. So, but this is the start of something more to come.
Here we are.
Cheers.
Thanks.